Footage is circulating around the world showing women falling to their knees before representatives of the TCI whose hands are covered in blood up to the elbows, and that is no figure of speech. No, this is no longer a metaphor. Look at these images. Those hands are truly covered in the blood of the very people they are trying to drag out of their own homes.
The war has become more expensive, and that is a fact. More resources are needed. The deficit is larger, and the enemy is using more tools against us. And we need not only to defend ourselves, but to act more actively. All of this requires resources. This must also be a joint effort of the entire state.
1 month left until Election Day. Nevertheless, there is still a high probability that our adversaries will organize extremist protest actions aimed at discrediting Russia and its leadership, and at discrediting and marginalizing the electoral processes in our country. This year, too, invitations to the aforementioned September elections have been sent to 12 international organizations and more than 100 countries. As of today, August 20th, representatives from 55 of these countries have already confirmed their intention to visit Russia. Among them are Russia's traditional partners from the CIS, the SCO, BRICS, ASEAN, and countries in Africa, the Middle East and Latin America. The combat capabilities of the Ukrainian armed forces are being systematically reduced as a result of the effective actions taken by the Russian armed forces to suppress the military potential of the Kyiv regime. In an attempt to cling to power, the regime controlled by Western sponsors, Zelensky's terrorist regime, has set its sights on escalation, relying on lethal weapons and equipment supplied by NATO countries. On average, 60 civilians were injured and 10 killed every day as a result of attacks, including criminal attacks, by the Ukrainian armed forces. Footage is circulating around the world showing women falling to their knees before representatives of the TCR, Territorial Recruitment Centre, whose hands are covered in blood up to the elbows, and that is no figure of speech. No, this is no longer a metaphor. Look at these images. Those hands are truly covered in the blood of the very people they are trying to drag out of their own homes. And these poor wives, sisters, mothers, citizens of Ukraine and Ukrainians, are kneeling before these monsters and begging for mercy. This is what the whole Kyiv gang has reduced its own people to, simply for money from the West, for money from those who have spent decades dreaming of taking revenge on those Ukrainians, those Red Army soldiers who defended Ukraine, their land, from Nazism and fascism, and who were victorious back then. In the style of Gogol, Russian novelist, short story writer, and playwright of Ukrainian origin, and in the spirit of his immortal novella Taras Bulba, one might ask, well, my son, did the West help you? The West that organized your life through Euromaidan and dragged you into this political farce that is actually just mad and unconstitutional? Against this backdrop, I would like to emphasize that the sole guarantor of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity has been, and can only be, Russia, as Russian President Volodymyr Putin has repeatedly emphasized. The New York Times reports that European capitals are scrambling to devise their own formats for negotiations on Ukraine, so as not to be left on the sidelines of history when the terms of a settlement are discussed in earnest. We, incidentally, are noting such moves at various levels through our existing diplomatic channels. These are interesting processes too. Last night, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station lost its external power supply due to damage to a power line, and was switched over to backup diesel generators in accordance with standard procedures. Have you heard anything from the Western capitals? From Brussels, London, Paris, Berlin, Rome, Madrid? Well, has anything been said anywhere from Washington to Tokyo? No. And why is that? Do they not understand what the consequences might be? Do they not realize that these consequences will affect not only Eastern and Central Europe, but the whole world, because of the terrorist bacillus infecting the Kiev leadership, which feels it has the backing of the West? Transferring funds to the Kiev regime amounts to nothing less than aiding and abetting the organization of terrorist attacks. This constitutes a direct violation of the International Convention for the Suppression of the Financing of Terrorism of December 9, 1999, and the International Convention for the Suppression of Bombings of December 15, 1997. The Russian Federation is entitled to bring claims against those who sponsor acts of genocide, terrorism, or other international crimes committed by Ukraine. Europeans who are involved in plundering the interest generated by the reinvestment of the Bank of Russia's assets fall squarely into this category. Such actions will not go unpunished. The visit to Kyiv by UNESCO Director General Khalid El-Inani is yet another manifestation of both double standards and the undermining of any standards enshrined in the United Nations doctrinal documents. It constitutes a breach of the principle of impartiality, taking sides in the conflict, and a disregard for the requirements, in particular, Article 6, Paragraph 5 of the UNESCO Constitution, which require the Director General to refrain from any action that might affect his position as an international official. How much airtime has been devoted on television to discussing how laws on foreign agents should be drafted? What was done to Georgia, to its legislators, to its public figures, who drafted a similar law to defend their domestic sphere, having experienced firsthand all the charms of American democracy? Georgia was subjected to all manner of abuse at every level, including, first and foremost,
First, I believe it is important to conduct an audit of all agreements with our partners, with our strategic partners, what has been implemented and what is still awaiting implementation. Please try to make sure that every communication with partners delivers specifics for our defense, air defense, and counter-ballistics. This is a key priority. And not only that, but it is a key priority, especially before winter. You all know the details regarding one of the biggest challenges we currently face is funds. Yes, it is indeed a very serious challenge right now, first and foremost, in the defense sector of Ukraine, and we need to find the necessary resources. And I believe that this is the biggest challenge we have faced. The war has become more expensive, and that is a fact. More resources are needed. The deficit is larger, and the enemy is using more tools against us. And we need not only to defend ourselves, but to act more actively. All of this requires resources. This must also be a joint effort of the entire state. In principle, this information is not public. All of us are deeply aware, especially the heads of various services and institutions, and not just the Ministry of Defense. So that it does not become public, I will not go into details right now. But you know that this is a serious challenge. We have 4 months, and during these 4 months we definitely must not be weaker than the enemy. This is serious joint work of the entire state, the parliamentarians, because part of this financial deficit is definitely covered by parliamentary decisions, by positive voting. And there is a large volume there. And the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine must submit all the necessary draft laws to Parliament. And separately, you also know, besides this amount, which constitutes a large share, all of this will already rest on the shoulders of all the defense forces, diplomats, the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Prime Minister, undoubtedly, and the President of Ukraine, to find additional funds so that we remain strong.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now